and combat the growing anti-Semitism in the world today. And joining us now from New York is Elizabeth Pipko, founder of the Lest People Forget Project. With more, thank you so much for joining us, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So tell us about the project itself, the Lest People Forget Project. What does it entail?
Yeah, so the Lest People Forget Project launched about a week ago, with a few days before Holocaust Remembrance Day. As you just mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of people are still unaware of our history, still unaware of why they have to commemorate the murder of 6 million Jews in our history, and why we need to make sure that the younger generation not only remembers this history, but continues to teach it in the future so we can learn from it and keep it from ever happening again. So the Lest People Forget Project is an online platform. We are utilizing decentralized technology, trying to inspire young people to get involved in the movement, and to hopefully take a step forward and lead the way when it comes to fighting for our people, fighting for our history, and making sure that the older generation knows that their history, their story will never, ever be forgotten.
And why did you actually decide to launch this project? I mean, what made you initially think that young people are uneducated about this matter? Where'd you see it first?
Yeah, so I've fought on the front lines, I like to say, with anti-Semitism for years now. I've witnessed it since I was a young child, but I've obviously witnessed it on the rise. We saw what Kanye West was saying in the fall, which unfortunately was not just horrible coming from him, but horrible knowing that he has, I think, close to 30 million followers on social media, which we know mainly are young people who are unfortunately inspired by his words, many of whom are just uneducated on the topic and don't actually understand our history or what they're repeating when they repeat his pretty despicable statements. At the same time, I actually found myself having a conversation in the fall with, I want to say, about 5 or 6 teenage girls, one of which was actually Jewish, all of which said that they did not know about the Holocaust. This actually makes sense with the stats that I've seen recently. I think there was a poll that was done a few years ago that showed that everyone, or let's say Gen Z, so it was anyone between the ages of 20 and 40 approximately, was polled in the United States. And I think 1 in 10 respondents said they'd never heard about the Holocaust. I think half of respondents said they were not aware and thought that 2 million or less Jews were murdered. So I think the stats kind of show where we have failed miserably. The conversations I've had only reiterate that. And I knew that if no one else was going to step up, I had to kind of hope to inspire the younger generation to lead the way as well in this fight.
That's very nice. And speaking about Kanye West, you interestingly chose the domains educatingye.com and educatingkanye.com, an interesting choice. Why specifically him? Why specifically Kanye West? There's so many, unfortunately.
You're right. Unfortunately, there are very many. I think the Kanye one for me was very out of left field. I've been a big fan of his for years. I did not expect that to come from him. I also think there's a lot of people out there, like you said, unfortunately, that have really despicable views, both about Jews and about Holocaust denial. But Kanye West is a very big deal. Nowadays, you know that as well as I do. He has a lot of young supporters. I think that's what I keep stressing to people. There's always going to be people out there that don't understand history or that want people to not remember it. But the younger generation, they're pure. Their minds are empty, and we have a plan. We have an opportunity to kind of give them that information, give them that knowledge, and let them fight and lead the way. So I think knowing that Kanye West inspires young people, that's what really struck with me. Like I said, I think 30 million or more followers across social media, most of which are young, that don't really understand what he's saying. And I thought if I could give them at least the knowledge and information to understand that he was wrong, they'd not only want to fight back, but be inspired to share that information with their friends and encourage them to fight back as well.
Did you get any reaction from him yet, from Kanye himself? Or for anyone?
Not yet. I don't think he has much to say. Hopefully he's changed his mind. Maybe he's been on educatekanye.com and he has learned his lesson. Let's hope.
It will be very easy for him to find, that's for sure. Now, you believe that Holocaust education is key to combating anti-Semitism. I mean, what do you hope this will achieve, this project?
I think as we're always taught, if you forget history, we're doomed to repeat it. It's that simple. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, Jews in particular, it's just my experience because I run in Jewish circles, but I think a lot of people tend to forget their history, and that's why we, don't learn from the past and have a lot of the issues that we see right now in our present and unfortunately probably in our future. So I think the Holocaust, because it was so recent, I think young people don't actually understand that it was literally just one generation ago. Holocaust survivors still, thank God, walk the globe today. And I think if we can teach people about this history, the history that they can feel and touch and see by visiting, a Holocaust museum or memorial, by going on lestpeopleforget.com or educatekanye.com, by knowing that they could clearly understand what happened with maybe a 10-minute Google search, we might have the opportunity to put enough knowledge into enough people's minds so that they just decide to take the path of educating their friends and future generations, something that not enough people are doing.
Now, today there are many different forms to educate yourself about the Holocaust, about burning Jewish matters. As you mentioned, museums, you have TikTok, in which a lot of projects already were made. I mean, were done. What do you think about all the options that you have out there?
I think it's amazing. I think there's only one way to counter a lot of the anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial that we see out there, especially on social media. And that's by putting out our own content. You know, there's a reason that my website now exists and this platform exists, but there's also a reason that those TikTok accounts that you mentioned exist, and those fighting anti-Semitism on social media exist. Those starting their own organizations, we all exist for a reason. And unfortunately, it's to counter the other side, which has a very loud voice and presence on social media, because we can do whatever we want on social media, we can say whatever we want, and that unfortunately gets into the minds of those that are much too young to understand what they're reading, what they're seeing, and unfortunately what they're sharing. So I think it's up to all of us to counter everything that we see, not just by telling our friends, but by making those accounts and creating websites, innovating in any way that we know how, and making sure there's enough tools out there so nobody ever takes more than 5 seconds to have to understand the atrocity that was the Holocaust.
Elizabeth, and in one sentence, what can our viewers do to contribute, to help in your project?
You can go to lestpeopleforget.com. There are multiple ways to get involved. It shouldn't take more than a few minutes, and I hope that everyone sits there with their families and friends, gets involved, and hopefully does the same in their communities.
That's great. Elizabeth Pipko, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.